I'm in my zone.
Hey, this is Zera at ReviewZoneHD, and I'm bringing you my final review of 2013, possibly the last review that I'll be doing for some time, and it's going to be on a game that released over a month ago. I don't generally review games this late, but for this one I was going to make an exception. It's going to be the PlayStation 3 version of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. I was too busy to cover it the week that it released, but I didn't want to do my top 20 favorite games of 2013 video without including this one in the list. And I took my sweet time playing through this one because I wanted to actually try to enjoy playing it opposed to hammering through it as fast as possible for a review. It's holding a PS3 Metacritic score of 88, which is 3 points higher than last year's Assassin's Creed 3, which I also reviewed here on the channel. I went back and watched that review tonight before sitting down to write this review, and it kind of made me laugh a little bit because a lot of what I said in last year's review could also be said about this year's game. I also need to point out I'm not an Assassin's Creed fanboy. In fact, I didn't really like the first two titles all that much. The whole climbing mechanic I felt was overused with those two titles. I'm not excited about the whole animus concept that's in each title, but the third entry into the series added enough variety and some pretty decent RPG elements that it kind of turned the tide for how I viewed this franchise, and this year's title follows in those footsteps. It still lightly incorporates the climbing and exploration mechanics that are found in every year's game, which work exceptionally well as you can smoothly jump and swing between objects like Tarzan in a jungle, but that stuff takes a back seat to a more well-rounded journey on the open seas in your very own pirate ship this year. The trick though is getting through the first few hours of the game to the point that it actually opens up a little bit. I can't speak for everybody else that has enjoyed playing this title this year, but I really did not like how this game opened up, and playing through the first 3 or 4 hours took me over a week because I just was not digging how this game started off. The story is a mess from the very start. I don't know if some of the cutscenes were chopped out or left out, but there were points that it felt like I had skipped over an entire section of the story or the game, and yes, I was actually paying attention to all of the cutscenes. And for the first few hours it was hard for me to care or attach myself to the main character because, like the story, he just wasn't that interesting at the beginning of the game. He wants to be a pirate and make some money. I get that's the angle, but that's not enough to keep me interested in a story in a game. Beyond that, you're going to have to put some time into it before anything really heats up with the plot or, in my opinion, becomes interesting. Everything does slowly start to pull itself back together once Blackbeard and James Kidd enter the story. The voice acting and the interactions with those two characters were the saving grace in an otherwise boring storyline. I almost wish the main character was James Kidd because the person that voiced him was far more interesting than the main character. To make matters a little worse is the fact that the main missions for this game are almost recycled from last year's title and brought very little new twist to the table. You're going to be tailing boats and eavesdropping on enemies so much that if it weren't for all the extra side activities that you can get wrapped up into, this game might not have panned out as well. If I want to play Assassin's Creed 3, then, well, I can go play Assassin's Creed 3. I was not impressed with the core of the story and the main missions one bit. If that's all there was to this game, I don't think I could have stomached playing it more than a few hours. However, before anybody opens up the haterade and gets their panties in a wad in the comments, the overall scale of this game world and the amount of side activities that you can get wrapped up into will rock this one back into one of the most interesting games to play this year in a hurry. Once I was about 8 to 10 hours in, I was loving this game. It has the same sense of freedom that other juggernaut titles like Skyrim or Red Dead Redemption or Grand Theft Auto have. They give you the wheel to your own ship, a map, a sword, a gun, and then they cut you loose. Go do whatever you want. And there is a whole lot to do on here. You can find treasure maps and go searching for buried treasure, which was surprisingly fun. You can take out assassin contracts and go hunting down people, which had almost a Hitman sense of style to it, especially once you get the berserk darts that were fun to play around with. You can upgrade your ship weapons and your ship's appearance any number of different ways and go wreck anything that dares cross your line of sight in the ocean. You can go hunting on both land and sea, and they tossed in a diving bell so you can search underwater shipwrecks while trying to dodge sharks in the process. You can collect new songs for your ship's crew to sing, and graphically this game is not only impressive, but it brings that same sense of calm and peace at times that you would want in a game focused on exploring every nook and island that you can sink your teeth into, almost like taking a vacation every time you cut the game on. But as I mentioned at the start, this game does come with a lot of the same problems that were seen in last year's title. You're still going to get the texture pop-ins and even some pop-outs. I had characters and weapons both appear and disappear from right in front of me on many occasions. My game never once froze, but I saw a lot of minor technical issues such as twitching objects, minor sound problems, and I even had trouble with a couple side activities that didn't quite work as they should have. The multiplayer could be viewed as either something really great for those that are new to the Assassin's Creed games, or a huge letdown for those that have played last year's game and they were hoping for something new this go around. The upgrades and the level up system are much deeper this year. It reminded me a lot of the Call of Duty franchise in that regard, but the core gameplay is exactly like last year's, with a couple gimmicky new modes tossed in to at least put a small spin on it. If I hadn't played last year's multiplayer so much, I probably would have enjoyed this year's a little bit more, but I couldn't help but be supremely disappointed that there was no open sea naval battles in the online multiplayer for a game that is entirely focused on that in its single player mode. The ship controls and the options for combat make the sea battles a lot of fun, and it would have been just awesome to fight real players online with that setup, so I can only assume that it wasn't included in this game because of some type of technical limitation. If you're not a fan of Assassin's Creed games, this is still a game that I would highly recommend if you have any interest in the tropical Caribbean or pirates theme that fills this game, because they nailed that aspect. If you want to play a game as a pirate, this is going to be your game. I do have a few more minor nitpicks with this title, but in the end it still provided one of the best overall experiences that I've had this year on the PlayStation 3, even with a few bugs and glitches tossed in, and it will be included in my top 20 favorite games of 2013 video, which I'll be uploading very soon. This is Zero at ReviewZoneHD, and as always, thanks for stopping by.
I've got a clear shot! A clear shot!